Mario Kart is a series known by millions. Its unique take on the racing genre has forever changed our perception on what a racing game can be. The most popular entry in the series, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, has sold over 60 million copies, making it one of the best-selling games of all time. But out of all the entries in the series, there's one I rarely hear people talking about anymore. One that, despite laying the groundwork for the entire series, is commonly referred to as the worst Mario Kart of all time. That game is none other than the topic of today's video, the original Super Mario Kart for the SNES. In this video, I want to give the game an honest chance. I want to explore every aspect of it. And most importantly, I really want to see if after all these years, does Super Mario Kart hold up? Released on September 1st, 1992 here in North America, Super Mario Kart is the first entry in the Mario Kart series. And funny enough, originally wasn't even supposed to feature Mario characters. You see, after the release of F-Zero as a launch title for the SNES, producer of the game, Shigeru Miyamoto, wanted to create a racing game similar to F-Zero, however with the main focus of the game being on simultaneous split-screen multiplayer, something F-Zero couldn't do due to hardware limitations. And as development began on this new kart racer, Miyamoto realized that in order to achieve this split-screen multiplayer, the tracks of the game couldn't be nearly as long and complex as F-Zero's, hence this game's short and simple tracks. The idea to add Mario characters to the game came when the team was observing how well their characters looked in action. More specifically, how they looked when passing another driver. At first, they were just using random placeholder characters. However, after noticing one of the placeholder characters was a guy in overalls, someone on the team had the great idea to put Mario in one of the karts. And after seeing it, the team decided to turn the game into a Mario-themed kart racer, and thus Super Mario Kart was born. Upon opening the game, you're greeted with this simple but cute little title screen, and have the option to play either one-player mode or two-player mode. Obviously, being the loner I am, we're going to be starting off with the one-player mode. In single player, you have the choice between Grand Prix and Time Trials. And while Time Trials are literally the exact same in this game as they are in every other Mario Kart game, with the goal being to race across a certain course as quick as you can without the bother of other racers or items, the Grand Prix mode is actually pretty different. Probably the biggest difference overall when comparing this to every other entry in the series is that Grand Prix are 5 races instead of 4. Along with that, Super Mario Kart is one of only 2 games in the entire franchise to feature a live system. You see, placing in 5th place or below in this game, Mario Kart 64 and Mario Kart Super Circuit, will result in you being unable to move on. In Mario Kart 64, you can restart a race as many times as you want until you get 4th place or higher, while this game and Super Circuit have a live system and only allow you to retry 3 times in total throughout an entire Grand Prix. I honestly think this live system is pretty cool, but really you should just be able to move on despite placing poorly, because even if you do come last in a Grand Prix race, you can still come back from that and win the others to boost your overall point total. Moving on from the weird live system though, we have the character selection. And for being the first entry in the series, Super Mario Kart is a pretty good roster of racers. I mean, you got Mario, Peach, Bowser, Koopa Troopa, Luigi, Yoshi, and Toad. The only odd one out here is Donkey Kong Jr., who I can only imagine is here because the modern Donkey Kong design we all know and love today didn't debut until 1994 with the release of Donkey Kong Country, a game that came out 2 years after Super Mario Kart. Redesigned apes aside, the 8 playable characters in this game are very interestingly divided into pairs of 2 based on their stats, something that never returned in future Mario Kart games. The 4 groups include the Bros, which consist of Mario and Luigi, the Dragon and the Lady, featuring Peach and Yoshi, the Showdown starring Bowser and Donkey Kong Jr., and the Small Guys, featuring Koopa Troopa and Toad. The Bros group has pretty okay stats all around the board, making them decent starter characters. The Dragon and the Lady have bad handling, but make up for it with their insane acceleration stat, allowing for them to easily recover from being hit. The Showdown, while having very bad acceleration, have an incredible top speed and high weight stat, allowing for them to effortlessly knock the low weight group, the Small Guys, all over the place. To make up for their weak weight, the Small Guys have great acceleration and handling, allowing them to quickly recover from being knocked off the track. Having the characters be divided into pairs based on their stats is something I really like, as it helps you easily find the playstyle that fits you. But also something that would only work with a small roster of characters. Imagine something like this in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe or any other Mario Kart that has a big cast of characters, and you will immediately realize how confusing it would be. Stats aside though, there is a lot of charm to how these characters are grouped. I mean, obviously Mario and Luigi being together is a no-brainer, but combinations like Bowser and Donkey Kong Jr. or Peach and Yoshi are very unexpected pairings that actually make a lot of sense when you think about it. I would say, oh, I would love to see this return, but we did see it return, as a main gimmick. One thing that really surprised me when I played this game for the first time years ago was how nice the controls felt. I mean, you would think trying to play a racing game on this would be difficult and annoying, but it absolutely isn't. Using the R button to power slide and the D-pad to steer is something that I remember feeling incredibly natural when I played this on an actual SNES years ago. Going back to get footage of this game for this video, I played it on the Switch using a Pro Controller and was so surprised to realize just how well the D-pad works for this game. I mean, I literally refused to use the control stick because the D-pad simply works so much better. A lot of people may look back at this game and criticize it for not having controls as smooth as later entries, and while yes, that is an incredibly valid argument for those saying this game doesn't hold up well, Super Mario Kart makes the absolute best use of the D-pad that it can. The power slide mechanic is a great example of how well the D-pad is utilized in the game. There is genuine skill that goes into understanding and making good use of it. So yes, while later entries may have smoother and easier to understand controls, Super Mario Kart does what it can using the limitations it had, which is something I will always appreciate about it. Something I will not always appreciate about this game though, is its track selection. You know how earlier I mentioned that each Grand Prix has 5 races? Well, of these 5 race Grand Prix, there are 4 cups to choose from. The Mushroom Cup, Flower Cup, Star Cup, and the secret Special Cup you unlock after getting a gold trophy in each of the other cups. By doing some simple math, you would think that since there are 5 races in each cup and 4 cups in total, that would mean Super Mario Kart has 20 tracks overall, right? No, there's actually only 8. Of these 8, 7 of them are reused at least once, with Mario Kart Circuit having 4 variants. And one of the variants, Mario Circuit 4, just being a mirrored version of Mario Circuit 3. Initially, I chalked this up to hardware or storage limitations, but after doing a little research, I found out this was absolutely not the case, and that this was a conscious decision made. So while yes, it is very likely that the team didn't expect the series to get so big, so they didn't put a lot of thought into every aspect, the lack of variety when it comes to the track selection does not help this game hold up in the slightest, and is something I really cannot defend. But I mean, honestly, almost every track theme and variation here is a lot of fun to race on, with the only exception being the horrendous design of Vanilla Lake. First off, you basically have to squint the entire time you play this track theme because of how bright it is. Seriously, when the first variation of this track came up when I was playing the Star Cup, it felt like I was hit with a flashbang. Another thing both variations of this track suffer from is these things, the ice blocks. The ice blocks appear out of basically nowhere since the track is so bright and are really difficult to avoid on Vanilla Lake 1. And even if you are able to somehow notice them through the bright whiteness of the track and the low draw distance, you'll probably misjudge your turn because of how slippery the ice is and end up hitting them anyway. And weirdly, the rival CPU always seems to have no problem avoiding these ice blocks. Because of this, it took me so many attempts to even get a decent placing on the track. I think Vanilla Lake could have been handled much better if the white tones were turned down and the ice blocks were more visible ahead of time. Of the other track themes here though, I do like how each one sticks to a certain gimmick throughout its variation to give them some identity. For example, Mario Circuits are simple and more about making good use of items. Donut Plains are about sharp turns and occasionally avoiding mole enemies. Ghost Valleys are about avoiding hitting the walls as they disappear upon being crashed into, and help prepare the player for Rainbow Road's lack of any walls. And Bowser's Castles are about performing jumps and tricks using mushrooms or feathers. If the lack of track variation here was because of hardware limitations, I would give Super Mario Kart some points here for working around those limitations, but since we know that isn't the case, while I appreciate the distinctness and uniqueness of each track's variations, I can't appreciate it as much as I want to. But don't get me wrong, I still do think it's really cool though. Track selection aside, somewhere where Super Mario Kart does have a lot of variation is in its items. Items, alongside the simultaneous split-screen multiplayer, were pretty much the main gimmick of this game. The items were what set Super Mario Kart apart from other racing games. And while it wasn't the first to introduce them, it was the first to fully flesh out the idea and make it a core mechanic and staple of the game. Super Mario Kart's primary focus was on making the track chaotic and unpredictable, which allowed for just about anyone, regardless of their skill level, to enjoy the game in some capacity, but also allowed for more skilled players to master the use of items like the mushroom or feather to skip huge parts of the track. In the main Mario Kart GP mode, you have the chance at getting 7 different items, with an 8th item, the Ghost, being exclusive to Battle Mode and Match Race. Along with these 8 obtainable items, there were also weirdly 3 unobtainable items that only certain CPU characters can obtain, like the Yoshi Egg or Fireball. These unique items exist as part of this game's CPU item system, where a certain CPU character gets access to a specific item they can use against the player, for some reason. For example, characters like Donkey Kong Jr. or Koopa Troopa get obtainable items like a banana peel or green shell, while other characters like Peach and Yoshi get unobtainable items like the Poison Mushroom or Yoshi Egg. I imagine this was done so each CPU character would have a specific item that fit them, but it is really weird that these items are unobtainable. Imagine if it was like this in Double Dash or something. My absolute favorite obtainable item in the game has to be the feather. This item, as I briefly mentioned before, allows you to skip huge parts of a track when used right, and perfectly lends to the flatness of the tracks in this game. A lot of people have wanted to see this item return in a future Mario Kart game, but ever since the series jumped to 3D, ignoring Super Circuit, it wouldn't work nearly as well. The feather thrives off of Super Mario Kart's flatness. I was happy to see it return in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as a Battle Mode exclusive item though, as it does kinda work there. Moving on to the thing this game was most praised for at its release, we have the multiplayer. And playing this with a friend, I had a lot of fun. The Grand Prix translates really well, and it was very fun competing against each other alongside the CPUs for who'd win the race. The actual split screen of it wasn't distracting or hard to transition to at all, since the game always has you in split screen mode, regardless of if you're playing multiplayer or not, for some reason. I was honestly surprised with just how much fun it was playing with another person, and even more surprised at how well it worked. Simultaneous split-screen multiplayer to this caliber was very uncommon back in the early 90s, and the fact that it holds up this well over 30 years later says a lot about how much fun this must have been back when it came out. If you have a Nintendo Switch Online subscription, I would highly recommend trying this game at least once with a friend. The most fun I had with the multiplayer in this game had to be with the battle mode. You have 4 courses to choose from that are decently different enough from each other in both their layout and design. The gameplay is about as simple as a battle mode gets in a Mario Kart game, but is somehow still better than the battle mode we got in the Wii U version of Mario Kart 8. You have 3 balloons, and your goal is to run over item panels and use those items to hit the other player 3 times in order to pop all their balloons. Battle mode does remove items like the coin and lightning, as the coin would be pretty useless, and the lightning would be too useful. There is one item exclusive to the battle mode though that I mentioned before, and that's the ghost item. The ghost makes the user invisible to the other opponent for about 20 seconds. During this 20 seconds, the ghost will steal an item from the other player if they can and give it to the user. I honestly have no idea why this item was exclusive to the battle mode and match race, as it would have been incredibly useful in the main Grand Prix mode, but for some reason is stuck here. Overall though, the battle mode in this game is incredibly simple, but does its job as a fun mode to play every now and then. I genuinely appreciate just how simple they kept it here, but I'm glad they did expand upon it and give it more depth in later entries. For the last of the 2-player exclusive modes, we have Match Race. This mode allows for 2 players to race against each other similar to Grand Prix, however letting the players choose specific tracks to race on, and most notably, not including any CPUs. I really appreciate that this mode is here, as it lets players essentially 1v1 each other, without having to worry about the broken CPU rubber banding and item use. Super Mario Kart, being the first entry in the Mario Kart franchise, obviously has its flaws. I mean, you have the reused track themes, weird unobtainable items, sometimes annoying track design, and interesting rival mechanics. But at its core, this is a really solid experience. I mean, ignoring the gameplay itself, Super Mario Kart not only laid the groundwork for the entire Mario Kart series, introducing staple mechanics to the franchise, but it also forever changed what a racing game could be. There are so many kart racers that took direct inspiration from this title. Super Mario Kart redefined a genre. The controls hold up astoundingly well for a SNES game, and the D-pad couldn't have been utilized better. There is so much replayability present in this title, and whether it be playing time trials trying to get your best time on Rainbow Road, battling with a friend and constantly bumping into walls you didn't know were there, or just racing, simply racing in a Grand Prix, probably against a Luigi CPU that just won't stop spamming stars. Going back to this game, I was skeptical. I mean, just look at it. Yes, it looks graphically impressive for a SNES game, but I thought that's about as far as it would go. I couldn't be more happy to have been proven wrong. Super Mario Kart is one of, if not the most fun SNES game I have ever played. And it says a lot about how great the Mario Kart series is, when a game that's constantly considered to be the weakest in the series is still one you can get hours of enjoyment out of. I can confidently say that even over 30 years after its initial release on the SNES in 1992, and an entire series of sequels building upon its foundation and constantly improving it, Super Mario Kart absolutely still holds up.